don't see on regular TV. From another perspective, something relative to your needs. And we gonna have deep subjects, and we gonna turn the lens. And there's no topic we won't skip, so please don't miss weekly, yeah. Tune weekly to check in, weekly check-in, weekly check-in, weekly check-in, tune in to weekly, check-in, weekly check-in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kaya Shivers. Welcome to the weekly check-in. What's up? How you guys doing? Dane, how's the West Coast?
I'm well. The West Coast is good. The weather is good. We have one of them good California winters going on right now.
Okay. I'm jealous. How about you? So we have Dane Crawford, who is joining us along with Mikhail Furnace. Mikhail, how are you doing today?
Hola, estoy bien. ¿Cómo están?
Oh, bien, grazie. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm mixing my Italian up with my Spanish.
It's all good. It's all good.
Grazie. You know, I'm used to saying grazie, molto bene, va bene. Okay, anyway. My mother would be proud.
Nice flex.
Exactly.
Nice quick flex.
Mama, I done made it. Okay. And that's all you know. Because I'd be like, parla inglese, per favore. Okay. Welcome to the weekly check-in. We are in the light series. Let me explain the light series really quickly before we dive in. So last year, we started the light series as a way to involve the dope Ark Republic community and highlight a lot of the things that people who support, follow, or are members of Ark Republic, what they do, the organizations that they are a part of, the campaigns, the movements that they have been involved in, they spearhead, they lead. It was such a powerful response. And we wanted to actually end 2019 with like this energy of love and light to just usher in 2020, because we spoke, oh God, 2020 was going to be our year. It was in a way we all did not expect, right?
Right.
And so so what Ark Republic had to do, we were actually almost shut down. Running on bare minimum. But one of the things that I wanted to do was the end of the year, do the light series again, because I really believe that energy we had coming into 2020 really carried us in some of the darkest moments. And so we are in the light series, and we are in everything in the light series for the month of December is dedicated to just good energy, good vibration, good chi, positive news, looking at stuff from a lens of resolution and positivity. So, with that being said, I am sitting in and speaking with Dane Crawford and Mikhail Furnace to talk about some things. I want to be the fly on the wall because it is the men's today, and I want to hear what you got to say. So, first of all, tell me what's going on.
Well, life is good out here. I'm in the midst of filming a documentary, as you know. We just started principal photography. I'm proud of that. We did our first round of interviews, and I've learned so much just in the process of learning these interviews. So now I have like a whole bunch more I have to go research and learn, like things I thought I knew about hip hop and West Coast hip hop. Wow. I thought I knew, I had no idea. So I'm diving even farther than that. And, this goes into our conversation a little bit about entertainment and how COVID has affected entertainment. Like for me, I have been so much more focused since the shutdown happened, and I have been determined to like do a bunch of projects that I have been dragging my feet on, a bunch of projects that I have been procrastinating about. And, now we are here and we are in this place, and I've actually had a very productive time, a very productive year in regards to filmmaking, in regards to making music, even in regards to releasing music. So it's been an interesting time for me. It's been a very interesting time for me personally.
Yeah, so we'll get into that. For those of you who don't know, Dane is one of the leads in a band called The Wild Bunch, which when people say, oh, I've never heard of that band, I said, well, it's the West Coast version of The Roots. in terms of that's like the best kind of definition. Like when musicians come to town, when like those thoroughbreds come to town, they call the Wild Bunch to back them up. So thank you so much for joining Arc Republic. That is like one of the benefits that Arc Republic can say is that we actually have some really dope people now who are rocking with us. Mikhail Furnace.
Hello there.
Hello.
How are you?
We were speaking Spanish, Mikhail
Yes.
speaks Spanish all day, every day. He was D-Smoke before there was a D-Smoke.
Well, no, I think, we all have our own lane. I'm just Mikhail Furnace, always been Mikhail Furnace, But, I think we are related because we're, furnace and a smoke. They're related. So there's fire. So there's a reason why, brothers are speaking Spanish now. It's in our genes. So, I think, for me, 2020 has been a whirlwind, continue the grind, anticipating some positive news, hopefully sooner than later. A lot of things can't really speak on. So I've just been keeping my nose to the ground and just grinding with the group I've been working with, working on some writing projects and some other big things that can help out the community. And, within a week's time, hopefully, a week less than that, we can get some good news and let's see what it does, so just, staying focused.
Right. I think 2020 actually made everybody get into perspective in terms of how do you move effectively, right?
Yeah.
And part of that moving effectively is some things you just got to let brew in a pot with nobody seeing and only the people and your circumference to do it.
Because everything is nuanced now, and things, have to have its proper context. And I think, just in the space I am, I look at myself as a ligament. I don't necessarily need the publicity or whatnot, but I pride myself on being a connector tissue, and whatever role I can serve in a functioning organization is important. We get it done, not I. So that's the most important thing for me right now. And that's kind of just where my focus with 2020 is. Just to your point, let me play my role, play my spot. And when it's time, it'll come to light.
That's what's up.
And we'll all be in the race.
And the good thing I would say is that part of what you're saying, and let's roll into this first topic about the overall question that we are talking about. I spoke to Dr. Sharice Nelson about this as well. But the question is that what did COVID-19 and then the subsequent George Floyd protests, how did it disrupt things, but for the good? One of the things I could say that Arc Republic and just, me working is when all this broke down, the whole age of the influencer and the celebrity broke down as well. And I think you have more people who are looking for substance. Now, we all have that, guilty pleasures where we look at stuff, which I want to talk to you about this video you posted about this guy talking about a woman looking average. I want to talk about that in the next one. But also people are looking for substance in spirituality, in religion, in politics, in how they move, finances, right? So, with that being said, we're going to focus on about 5 or 6 things in this discussion about how did COVID-19 and the George Floyd protests change things, but looking from the lens of, how it changed it for the better. So the first thing is, let's talk about the entertainment industry. Both of you have affiliations with it. Mikhail, you were an official in basketball.
Yes.
And
women's college basketball.
College basketball, right? A lot of people don't know that sports is part of the entertainment industry.
It is.
Probably the most lucrative facet of the entertainment industry. With these, okay. I was going to say something, but I'm going to let y'all start it off. And Name, with you being not only in the music industry, but now you making films and producing and just being behind the scenes. So give me your thoughts about the entertainment industry and how it's changed.
So the way I feel like the entertainment industry has changed since the George Floyd, the protests, and COVID, like I always say, I think it was a perfect storm of all of those things. I think there has been an awakening and a sheet lifted off the country in regards to how we have conversations about Black bodies in America that we have been screaming loudly and trying to have since Trayvon Martin. But it seems that, you know, people just couldn't get it through their heads that this was happening, or they thought everything was a one-off. But I think the blatant symbolism of what happened with George Floyd and the fact that you couldn't get away, you had to sit at home and watch it. You had to sit at home and you had to see that video. You couldn't, there was no escape. There was no going to the movie theaters. You wasn't going to the pool hall. You sitting stuck in your home. So you're going to see it. And I remember right when the George Floyd video happened, the murder happened rather, so many people, the question that was being asked was, did you see it? And you knew exactly what people were talking about as soon as they said it. Did you see it? And I think that changed everything in regards for, it shifted in entertainment, because like you said, a big part of it is sports. It shifted in even the NBA and them deciding to utilize their power in a certain way, and for them utilizing, you know, wanting to speak up publicly, things that a lot of NBA players was like, we're going to stay away from that. I don't want to be political. I think they realize, you know, being Black ain't political, you know, being Black in America ain't political, and they were willing to, stand up in a way that we hadn't seen from any major American sport. Now, if you don't agree with their methods, or you don't think their methods were effective, that's another conversation. But the fact that they were willing to have a conversation and step up and step in, to me, speaks volumes in regards to us talking about how we haven't had that kind of movement. We haven't had that kind of sports involvement from the stars since the Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar days. So that was one thing that harkened back to that time. And then on the entertainment front, just thinking about, now you have all these companies seeking out Black voices. Mm-hmm. You have these companies seeking out the Black experience, but by Black people for the first time, because people have been seeking out the Black experience. But, you know, you have so many times where you find out the executive producer of your favorite hip hop documentary is a white dude. You know what I mean? Who wasn't there and wasn't really there to tell the whole story. So it's things like that I think are changing, because now it's it's not just us being mortgaged to be the entertainment. Now it's a little bit of us actually having a real voice and having some say and having some power in our narrative and having some power in our storytelling. And, you know, I just beg of all of us, even in things like this in Arc Republic, these things are the things that people are gravitating towards more than the usual, I guess you would say, frivolous foolishness that doesn't have any really substance to it. Like I've seen so many people who have been engaged much more in the conversations that we are having, even in the midst of entertainment. Even the entertainment conversations have been shifting back to social equity. We talked about this briefly, Kaya, like even the way they wrote, what's his name? Is it Roland?
No, it's not. Who's the
Randall?
guy?
Randall.
Randall.
Even the way they wrote Randall on This Is Us has changed this season because they start the episode with the George Floyd killing. So even you can see that the specific effect of George Floyd having on network television, where a character who has been Black, but his Blackness has not been explored at all in that show, the first thing they come back with is, and I think this not only was about the character in the show, but I probably was about the failing of the people in the writer's room. Like, y'all ain't asked me one time about being Black.
Which is indicative. Can I include something? And I want Mikhail, you to jump in and talk about specifically sports, because we talked about that earlier. You were talking about the players who did a lot of advocacy in terms of in the voting. But one, for the record, Randall was a limp noodle. And I am so glad that somebody stepped in. See, in my opinion, Randall's character was a perfect example of white liberals who say that inclusion and diversity works in their respective organizations. When the Black people that are there really don't agree, but they really need a job, so they really don't say anything, right? And they just allow these things to happen. For too long, particularly, I would say, when you come to art and you're talking about movies and film, even theater, there's this idea that you can have a story and anybody can play the story because it's about the human story. But
Right.
when you are in a country or in a world that has so many different tiers that are connected to race, religion, sexual identity, so on and so forth, everybody, it does not always translate. And as a matter of fact, what it did to Randall is that it erased his blackness. So first he had, in my opinion, what connected people to this particular character is that, very rarely do you see a Black man who is exploring mental health, is exploring how is he reuniting with his father, abandonment issues, all these things, as a middle-class Black man who is also dealing with being adopted, right? So this was just a very unique and new character. We all know people like that in our respective lives, but it was very new to see, on TV. So by giving him more of an identity and more layers this year that are directly connected to his Blackness was such a relief, because his character was dying out, which is what happens in these like multiple series shows. So so that's some good points. There's some other things I want to actually talk about. You raised some really good, interesting things. But Mikhail, let's talk about the sports.
Yeah, so I think, while we're looking at the effects of the NBA players and their voice and how they contributed to facilitating voting measures with the use of arenas, players speaking out about social issues, perhaps the biggest thing of 2020 for me was Deion Sanders at Jackson State.
Wow,
that changes the narrative. Because I think, as we talk about what COVID did, COVID exposed the plantation in its bigger form. So I think we also see this not from a corporate restructuring, but we should also look at this from an academic restructuring. You see how a lot of the major universities, such as the traditional powerhouses, they may be struggling in certain aspects because players are now looking at other opportunities to to provide a platform for themselves to shine and show their real talent. So now the question, as we look at social justice, one of the biggest ways that the foundation of social justice is academics. It's one of the pillars. It's not the only pillar, but it is one of the core pillars that we must build equality, we must build justice and a progressive movement on. So if you have a place like Jackson State, which probably arguably produced one of the greatest running backs in history,
Herschel Walker?
Walter Payton.
Walter Payton, yes.
Right.
Okay, excuse me.
Excuse me. Yeah, and don't you really went wrong for that. But that's a different. That's some Uncle Ruckus stuff right there. But we're gonna let that slide. I'm gonna go back to the great brother Deion Sanders, because I think what we also have to realize the power of prime time and what prime time tends to bring. And so when you look at the effects of prime time was able to get, Jackson State an extra $500,000 from a golf tournament with Phil Mickelson, Charles Barkley, Steph Curry, and one other player. But was it Tiger Woods? Was Tiger Woods in that one as well?
Oh Lord, and that's record breaking.
So I think, and I don't know if Tiger, but I know it was Steph Curry, Phil Mickelson, and Charles Barkley. Check me on the other one, please. But I think what you're looking at in this capacity, the power of sports are athletes, professional athletes that are willing to go back to their communities and teach and coach and lend that cachet to provide opportunities for the next generation of players. And it may not it may not manifest itself in sports, but like most major universities, the endowment and the TV contracts help bring money into other departments, which could be manifested through health, which could be manifested through economic opportunity, economic programs, manifested through educational departments throughout the school. So it's not just having the coach there for academic, but we must embrace this and see how does this create a windfall? Because the next level of this is people are going to want to see prime time. And that means the average game in the SWAC is not just an average SWAC game. It's a prime time event.
Yep.
Or people just don't go to the games just for the band, right? That used to just drive me crazy, because
but I think that's a vital part, though. I think we need to embrace that.
I'm not saying eliminate the bands, but I was going to say the joke was always that people would leave after halftime.
Right.
Yeah.
On
But now it's talent. But now it's
Right.
going to be and if you look at, so now what I also noticed too is the Dion effect is how, you know, players he doesn't have to recruit.
Mhm.
Players are leaving. Oh, you don't treat me well here. Okay, we're gonna leave this California school and go to Jackson State. Oh, we're gonna leave this Florida school and go to Jackson. Well, I'm not playing now because of COVID. Oh, I can go to Jackson State and play. And now players, you know, so it's the aspect of what he doesn't have to do, what Jackson State doesn't have to do, what another school such as Grambling may not have to do, because we get to play against Jackson State. I'm gonna go over here. If they on TV, I'm on TV.
On TV, yep.
So it's a win-win for everybody now, and you're gonna see in different aspects how this plays out. You look at the brother from Howard University, Mocker. What's the brother name? Mocker.
What just got injured?
No, he didn't get injured, but he plays for Howard. He was one of the top D1 prospects, went to Howard. So we'll see how this progresses in the first year. So we're going to see players making these changes, but I think the biggest thing is when you see pro athletes giving back in their latter days to move the culture forward, move the opportunities forward, and look at this not just from athletics, like I said, from medical, academic, social, but also business opportunities. You look at the platform or the blueprint that LeBron James and his crew did. You know, they went and controlled entertainment, marketing, and the agency aspect. So there's so many different aspects that this is going to create opportunities for enterprising young people at HBCUs.
Yep.
And I just want to add, and then Dame, you could jump back in. I also want to add that, you know, Deion Sanders is not the first Black NFL player to go to an HBCU. I want to say Walter Payton did. Who went to Grambling? Who went back to Grambling? Was it
Doug Williams went back at one time. He also taught at Morehouse. You also have, I think Mo Williams. Williams is also coaching, I think, at Alabama State.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are a lot of pro athletes that are coaching. There are a few coaches, like Penny went to Memphis.
But I'm gonna say there's a lot, but I think what what Primetime did is he made it marquee. He the dude that made it cool, right? Like because now you're gonna get other cool athletes who are looked at in that cool perspective that will be like, oh, you know what? Maybe I can go coach at an HBCU and I could be that guy over there. So I'm glad you called it the Dion Effect because that's a great name for it. But the Dion Effect is going to show, like, if you get a prime time, you know, no pun intended, but like a prime time player to come back to an HBCU, recruiting is going to go up. After recruitment goes up, you're going to start to get those recruits that would go to UCLA, that would go to Miami, that would go to those schools, you know what I mean? And you get them coming, and that also brings that TV money. Because now if you have all the top D1 recruits going to Black college, D1 and D2, you're going to have to put them on TV. You're going to have to etch out TV time for them, you know, because you have, like I told people all the time, I said, imagine if LeBron would have went to an HBCU. He could have went to one of the smallest HBCUs. TV was following him because TV was following him in high school. You know what I mean? So it's like now because of social media and you got all these players who already have their own following and their own platforms going into college. If you start to get them going into HBCUs, that money will follow. And as that money follows, the academics follows, because that's what happened when they took our best and brightest from sports. They took our best and brightest of sports, but also our academics started to follow. Our academics started leaving HBCUs. So it's going to funnel back the same way. So I think it's an incredible thing that he's doing.
Yeah.
And I hope that we see more like it. I saw Matt Barnes and Stack. Matt Barnes and Stack was talking about, they're like, yo, we want to see more people do it. We want to get us some basketball. We want to get us some football. And I'm like, okay. So it seemed like people are starting to get on that wavelength, because that can create change and that can create a very, you know, new kind of infrastructure for HBCUs if it's done the right way.
Right. And indeed, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
No, and I think once again, to Dane's point, you know, it's about the opportunities. It's about also what other players can see that, you know what, why do I have to go and sit on a bench at a Duke where I can go to Grambling or Jackson State or Alabama State and play right now for this reputable coach who had this, pronounced career in whatever sport. And I can learn and actually improve on my abilities and actually have an opportunity to do something professionally, whether it's here, whether it's overseas, whether it's some avenue in sports. because sports is evolving, and the methods by which sports is delivered, by which products are needed for each particular game and activity is going to be evolving. So, like I said, we have a lot of enterprising young people, what they call the hustlers mentality. And I think just having the opportunity and the network to be able to showcase your skill set and that platform will create a wealth of opportunities. But I say this with a caveat. We just can't say that, expect the floodgates to open and all these talented players to come. We have to realize that this comes with responsibilities that the leadership in HBCUs is going to have to modernize and change and make sure that we evolve and not be so traditional and historic, that we can, adjust to what we believe, to what's needed to move the culture forward. So those are the things that's going to be the push and the pull effect of this. They're going to be a push, but will they pull back and say, hey, it has to only be this way? We're going to have to make sure we find new ways to do things that we hold dear to us to make sure that we can keep this going forward.
I want to, you make an excellent point. I want to compare, I always compared HBCUs to like predominantly Black cities. And you made an excellent point, Dame, when you said how athleticism left, and then a lot of those in scholarship left, right? So what you had, you're correct, a talent drain at most HBCUs and the trickle effect that happened over the years. It's just like the Black community. When integration implemented, there was a brain drain in the Black communities. People moved to the suburbs and in places and in communities where they lost their cultural currency and their political power because they were the minority, right? But they did it in order to have this better life, right? But what happens in the trickle down effect at HBCUs, in my opinion, is that the salaries of professors did not change. And so you have professors almost being forced to stay and work longer than they should, which in colleges, a lot of jobs are not created robustly. So a lot of them is that when one professor leaves, another one is filled. So you have professors staying longer that should have retired. You have this diminished resources that go on, particularly when it comes to state schools. So there's a difference between private schools and state schools. There's a different monster there. But what we're seeing in the last several years is that a lot of state-run HBCUs have dwindled or have lost being predominantly Black because they were grossly neglected and underfunded by the racist state administration. So what having this new light on HBCUs can really tackle these issues, but it can only be tackled if this, to me, underperforming gatekeeping administration that usually are at HBCUs leave, get out, and allow fresh people with fresh blood, with great ideas, who can actually probably connect better with a Deion Sanders, and pull more in order to rebuild them. Because during Corona? So now because HBCUs have been underfunded, they have been going to Africa and recruiting heavily in Africa. So now HBCUs are becoming attracted to Africa when there's tons of Black people in the United States that would be willing to go to an HBCU. And not saying that Africans can go, but I'm just saying, like, the pool that built the HBCUs are leaving.
Well, you also have to, but see, the reason for the I guess external look for talent is because we have a dearth of talent here in the United States. Our high school system is not performing to the level it should. And so we have a lot of teachers, a lot of students who go into college who are ill prepared. And I have friends who teach college English, and I have kids that can't come in and write a sentence. This is freshman year English. And I've heard that on several occasions. So a school has to have resources in order to sustain itself and be able to have students that can stay in school. Right. And so over years, we've had this brain drain where the top students, they're going to state schools where maybe they can get a better tuition. They may be going to 2-year schools where they can get a 2-year degree and get into a productive field, a productive career that is allowing them to earn some money at a quicker rate. having a 4-year degree may be useless in some capacities. So that's where you have to find other places to recruit students and get students in that may be able to fill the needs you have in your university, unless, to your point, you modernize. But then the question becomes, do Black colleges want to go to a 2-year degree at the risk of considering themselves, we won't be considered a Black college. So it's saying that, you can still be a historical Black college and still offer a 2-year program, which allow your students to get out while still having components for a 4-year degree and as well as advanced degrees. But we have to have a comma and not an and or.
I didn't say it was an and or.
But I'm not saying to you. I'm not saying that to you.
Let me say this. Can I say this? I need to directly respond. What you're saying is the state of education across the board, regardless of what community it is. The intellect of the education of the United States has plummeted, and it only is for a certain few groups that get it. But what we saw with the scandal, you remember that college scandal?
Oh yeah,
rich people were paying for their dumbass kids to go in there, right? To get into college. So it's not. So but let me.
I agree wholeheartedly, and then it's not cultural; it's across the board.
But let me tell you what the legacy of HBCUs is that they understood that the education system never really fully fed Black people. And so, that historically they would allow people to come in that weren't quote unquote up to par or college material. This is where the resources that you said come into place. There were always classes to help. The idea was, we will bring you up to standard in these first 2 years to build you up. So this is not anything new. Let me also say this about foreign students in particular. A lot of these foreign students cheat on the TOEFL, which is those who, when English is your second language, a lot of them cheat. And so a lot of them come into schools not really understanding how to communicate. So there are a plethora of issues. What U.S. education is using are a lot of these foreign students as a cash cow because they have to pay that international fee. A lot of them come with cash and they'll just drop that money. Let's just say what it is.
And it's not just Africans, it's Indians.
No, I'm not talking about
India. Right. But that's
Indian.
Yeah. It's a big contingency. But to your point, I think that the crisis in education has become it's become a street corner. If you can hustle your way in and get to your next step. Right.
And that's charter schools, charter schools as well.
Everything, yes. So everything is about everybody trying to establish their own level of intellectual superiority, intellectual competency to say, hey, I did this at this level. I earned this degree. I earned this scholarship. And so there's so many factors here. Skyrocketing education is pushing people, higher education is pushing people to leave their country, to do all kind of measures to get into a place. So it's a bigger, I think while we're looking at the specific dots on the map of elementary, secondary, higher education, the bigger crisis is the social, economic injustices that exist in this system right now, that people have to do all these kind of extravagant means just to survive.
Right. Good point. Dave, you was about to say something.
Oh, no. I agree with both of you wholeheartedly in regards to saying that the lack of education and going into these colleges isn't a cultural thing. And I know we want to make sure we're clear about that. But also just the whole college system, I think, and this goes to your point, Kaya, there needs to be an overhaul because you are about to start having a bunch of kids who want to learn and experience learning for themselves as opposed to just memorization. Right. Like there's a generation of kids who I don't want to just memorize a test to get my degree. I want to actually gain knowledge to get my degree. And that's where a big disconnect is because a lot of places aren't trying to teach you how to gain knowledge. They're just saying, remember this and regurgitate it on the test. Remember this, regurgitate on the test. And that's why you have, I hate to say it, so many people who aren't of high intelligence with master's degrees and doctorate degrees because they were just good at continuing to go to school. They were good at continuing to take tests. So that's not always a measure of intelligence. So I think that's something that needs a huge overhaul, new administrations and new ideas to incorporate so we can really start to get the best out of our young intellectuals. Because I've seen so many of our good young intellectuals fall by the wayside because they weren't being challenged correctly, because they weren't getting the things that they needed to feed their minds. Because they weren't getting those things, we kind of lost a lot of them to mediocrity, just, to be clear. So I'm with you 100%, Kaya. We need to find a way to overhaul a lot of things in the system and these administrations.
Yeah, because a lot of certain communities know how to do school better than other communities.
That's true.
And so if you know how to do school, you know how to do the proper steps in order to get the marks you need in order to achieve the desired results you want. Mm-hmm. And so that comes into the bigger issue of, okay, where do we go from here? Because for COVID, it underscored, okay, our big problem with education is we can't teach. Mm-hmm. They lost, well, how do we teach people online? And two, the things that you really need, such as what I contend, such as, what they call blue collar or trade skills, are valuable skill sets that are also higher learning. If you look on Bloom's taxonomy, that creating something is the highest form. Now, do you have to create it verbally or do you create it manually? So the question of, the things that where you found kids or students or young people were very interested, where they maybe can manifest something creative, that became null and void when you couldn't do it over the internet. So now the question becomes, how do we move that forward? When we have now people who are, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14-year-olds that can go to coding camps and learn how to code and create programs on the computer. So the, manual skills or trade skills are also becoming, diverse in the sense that I don't need a computer science degree. I don't need 4 years of college to know how to use a computer. I can learn something through Udemy, through Coursera, and things like this, which can challenge and change how people become entrepreneurs, how they learn, and what modes and means they use to transmit that information.
And just, it's so funny. Coding actually used to be called a pink vocation. Women were the ones who were the computer programmers initially, right? So it's kind of,
with like 10 key and stuff like that. Those early precursors.
The 40s and the 40s and the 60s, women, because it was considered, because it wasn't laborious. Right. All you had to do was sit down and put some stuff together and just repeat it. It was just a certain formula. It was considered something that didn't have high intellect. So it's really interesting how those who control education, the narrative, or employment define what is considered, high thought or high value. Right. And then another thing, to speak to your point about the vocations that you were talking about is I'm doing a documentary, and one of them is, I'm talking about HBCUs, I'm talking about education. And I interviewed some educators, one of them, my mother-in-law, who was a home ec teacher. And she was breaking down how a lot of things that she taught and she learned in home ec, because she went to Hampton, she graduated from Hampton. And so she said, as a home ec major, she had to take biology and a whole list of what we would call hard sciences or STEM, because she said then it was called, home ec was not called home ec, it was called domestic sciences. She was like, because when you are doing things like sewing and cooking and baking and all that stuff that goes in there, you must know how to count, measure, understand temperature, understand, okay, if you put yeast in here, it will interact with this, blah, blah, blah. She said that's all science. And so what the educational system or the powers that be did not translate is that how much that helped in just kind of basic understanding life skills and measurements. Musicians, to me, are the,
but you know what? Modernity impacted that too. Modernity. Oh, because microwave, you don't have to measure anything with a microwave. Prepackaged food. So modernity also impacted that. Capitalism, because why should I have you measure?
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So the newfound world also impacted that capacity too. So, but to your point, home ec is also a euphemism for hospitality. Hospitality careers are things where you get these food trucks, where you get people able to, in terms of T-shirts, in terms of being artisan with drink making. These are different aspects that what's considered home ec or vocational is entrepreneurial. Right. It's a write-up for certain cultures and communities where they're doing a great job as a young startup in an up and revitalized, regentrified community. Mm-hmm. But for us, it gets taken out. So we have to look at these fields and capacities as nuanced and not just as diminished or minimized fields, but these are viable paths to economic opportunities and independence.
And another thing is that it creates a whole person. Like that's another thing that we've lost is that when you take all of these different things, you are so well-rounded and you have just a different understanding of how you approach it, or you have multiple options. Cassandra Laughlin, who is a chef and she's a writer, went to Cuba quite a bit. And she said in Cuba, people everybody, you know this, speaks several languages and plays several instruments.
Yeah.
When you do that, something in your head happens when you are communicating. And, you know, there's different ways to communicate. What we call language, that's just one way of language that happens, right? And so when you just say, if you can make $100,000 if you just learn how to code and you don't need college, you don't need what happens as a result of that, all of these, to me, incomplete beings were just being cycled through. And now people are like, oh, we need more musicians. We need more writers, right? I did. You stumped them out like 20 years ago.
Right.
And whatever that reading thing you was talking about, I forgot the name of it, Dame, that people had to do. What was it? What happened in the George Bush era? No
Child Left Behind.
Yeah, the No Child Left Behind, that whole program in terms of the standardized testing.
So
I know we got off in terms of talking about entertainment, but I need, because I didn't see it, what that boxing looked like between Tyson and Jones. Did they change the game? I don't know. Tell me.
Yeah, they changed the game because you can now get rich being an old slow fighter that got a name. You know what I mean?
Well, Tyson allegedly is only doing exhibitions for charity. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if he's getting paid off. Maybe some other busters coming out there for that money, but
I heard Holyfield challenged him.
He don't want that smoke. Tyson is still,
I don't know, because Holyfield always the one guy who always gave Tyson issues, even in a prime. So,
but some people don't age well.
That's true.
You got that one uncle. You got that one, like I said, Tyson is that one uncle that, he still got a firm hand. But you got some uncles that...
Yeah, I'm not fighting Tyson today.
I'm not. And Roy Jones, like I said, it was enjoyable to see. And what was cool about it was Roy Jones being Roy Jones. And an amount of honor and respect.
Now, what does that mean?
He really tried to be himself.
Okay.
Like he was dancing and moving. Yeah. He didn't try to be Tyson. He didn't try. I ain't letting this man hit me.
And he hit him. And he said he felt it.
Right. And Tyson was like
Tyson body shot. He said that shit still hurt, even in exhibition.
Right. But the thing that tripped me out, Tyson, what made me afraid, Tyson was like, but you took it. I'm like, oh shit, no, I don't want to take it. Yeah. When he said that, I was like, yo, G, I'm not. But it just shows a level of respect and a whole nother level. There's a different stratosphere for certain people. And for Tyson to pull that off, I think him and Roy Jones are only two could probably pull that off. Now, everything else may be kind of, because Roy played it. Roy understood what he was up against. Right. And he did what he had to do
to survive.
I didn't see it, but am I lying if I said that Tyson allowed grace and mercy in the ring?
Oh, yes.
No.
100%.
Maybe, but the best part was Snoop.
Snoop
was Snoop Dizzle. Snoop the drunk uncles. The drunk uncles.
They said, "Mama, they in the back fighting."
It was like, oh, your grandmama can break them up, dude. Like, come on, dude. It was stuff like when Snoop was talking, you could like, yeah, I can see that happening. I can see that happening. Like, yeah, that.
Yeah, they were like, where has he been our whole boxing lives?
Man,
like,
he's been on death row. We've always been listening to him. Y'all just getting hip to him.
Listen, I think Snoop has found his calling as a media personality. and I just read yesterday that him and is it Triller that did that boxing match? I think they're gonna launch. They are now gonna launch a boxing show together where you're gonna get more Snoop and you're gonna get more of them kind of fights. So
right. I mean, yeah, it was incredible. I mean, just it was fun to watch. It didn't seem like it was a brutal. It seemed just like it was an exhibition. It didn't seem. And
that's the thing too. That it was just fun to watch.
Yeah,
it was really just fun to watch. Like
right,
it really was.
I think the best part is knowing that Tyson smoked before the fight. He was high. That's the best. I mean, it's everything it's I guess you like sausage, but you don't know what's in the sausage. But when I found out what made this sausage, I'm like, oh, this is great. This is great. He was high doing it. And then the commentary after, and it was just like, of all the things out there, it was,
like everything around the fight was better than the fight. Snoop commentary, the post conference with Roy Jones looking like he about to pass out, trying to catch his breath. Mike Tyson getting mad because he like, why y'all ain't worried about me? Y'all keep worried about him. I ain't fighting. Here. Like, it was so many things, and poor Nate Robinson, and just man.
Oh, yeah. But that's deep what Tyson said though. That was a minute of depth. Like like what about me? Yeah. Like we sometimes think the lion or the bear is without emotion, and and so it just harkened to a bit of humanity, because I think even as you hear him say that, you look at where he's come over life, over his time, the journeys, the fact that, he only wants to do this for charity just shows that, damn, okay.
Yeah.
He's a different space, different person. And you just see if you watch his he has a podcast called Hot Boxing, there's several interviews, you like, man, this cat, like it, love it, and different if you want to judge somebody, but it's a raw emotion and it's some sincerity that I think, as we talk of Black males and Black relationships, to see this guy transform from what we saw and loved in 1988 as 89 as a killer, to somebody that is at this stage in his life that can find, like you said, alluded to, Kayed, grace and mercy on somebody.
But to me, what you said that Mike Tyson asked represents Black men in America, right? So we have this moment, right? But Black men have been asking that question for generations. But what about me? Everybody is being protected, or in this discussion. I'm talking about the discussion about physicality specifically. But Black men have always been the representation of hyperviolence, right? When they have not been the ones who've been hyperviolent. And when anybody lives long enough, they get to a point of emotionality and they're beginning to look at their lives, right? So him saying that is also, to me, this declaration of, like you said, of his humanity, of maybe perhaps what he had been attempting to do his whole life, is don't see this physical representation of who I am, but look within it. I am much more, which is, something, but he was trained to be a killer.
Right.
And it's really interesting. Most boxing is not new. It's a very old sport, wrestling, boxing, but they've always been what was displayed recently, exhibition matches. It wasn't to the death. That's a very Roman-esque philosophy in terms of those type of competitions. But I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how it, how you juxtapose this versus, I can't breathe, but what about me? That's a different type of aspect in terms of, staking your claim, agency, and agency of evolution. Don't just push me to the side because of what I was. and understanding how some people are nurtured. You know, Tupac had this verse about, you know, the rose that grew out of concrete. Well, there are some, you know, beautiful things that grow out of harsh circumstances, you know, and, you know, while we got to let things mature and grow, we also have to hold those accountable. Say, okay, we're going to put this on you to maintain your growth and not stagnate from here on out.
And I want to say this, and we could move on if you don't have anything to add, is we must recognize how Black creatives carried the whole country through in the pandemic with these verses, competitions, with D-Nice came out. You know what I'm saying? You have these exhibitions now. Like, that became the center of a lot of people's universes. And really, I remember when D-Nice, the old school, what was it? Was it the homeschool, the old school, the after school? Was it the after school? Or the quarantine school?
Quarantine mix? Did the quarantine mix?
Club quarantine.
Club quarantine.
Yeah, Club quarantine. When I read through the comments, they were like, oh my gosh, he, you know, first of all, I was able to move. I haven't moved because I've been sitting on my butt, you know, the pandemic, but I didn't know how depressed I was. So we must acknowledge once again how we are the food and the connective tissue and the blood and bones of the United States once again, right? And this recognition really needs to be implemented more so in the entertainment industry, because we cannot continue to be the creatives that produce stuff, but aren't the decision makers, aren't the ones with the resources, aren't the ones who greenlight material. It can't just be 2 or 3 people. It can't be, who's that dude who does Sunken Place?
Jordan Peele.
Keith Peele, you know, does good work, and Regina King does good work. We cannot afford that. We cannot accept that. You know.
Well, you know, to your point, I think one thing I would say, like, Jordan Peele has been doing a good job at elevating others, right, to be able to do what he does. Like, is her name? What's her name? Misha Green, who she's executive producer and head writer of the show Lovecraft Country.
That was some weird, great shit. But yeah,
you know what I'm saying. Yeah. But so for somebody like him, he's not I'm doing like I've seen so many shows that he produced and put on that he actually didn't touch or wasn't the main guy over, but he's actually helping to put other people on, and I think that's an important part. And we also have to stop giving away our art. We give away our power. We give away that power to be like, you know what? We are the tastemakers. We are the movers and shakers. We move the culture, not just the Black culture. We move American culture. You know what I mean? Like, we move American culture musically. We move American culture sports wise. Like, but we give away our power all too often and all too easy. So that's why I'm on board with people like Peele, who empowers people. I'm on board with LeBron James, who figured out how to get his homies put on and how they can manipulate the system now to get them dues paid the way they want and get them to move around the way they want. Like, so I think, to your point, Kaya, we have to start to wield our power. Like, we need to learn that, we got power and we can wield it, especially once we get in these doors. Instead of getting these doors and assimilating to what they do, let's get into these doors and bring some more of us in and make them assimilate to what we're doing. And that's what I hope we can get more of to happen.
And to your point, I think I dissent a little bit only in the standpoint of we got to stop supporting whack shit.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's been some good shit out, and I don't want to say I don't think there's been a resurgence, but COVID has just created this schism where it's like, okay, some bullshit fell through, and in the underground is where the good shit remains. So even during the COVID, 2 turntables and a mic turned out to be, you know,
the savior,
a beatbox, a boombox in the park, or what do you call it, a pill. Is what they call it now. Yeah. And your iPod in the park with the homies. Those became the quarantine cures. Listening to old school music, not the whack stuff. Nobody was jamming to no new stuff. It was the old school classics. Everybody was jamming. And that doesn't mean I'm against the new school. I'm just against whack shit. Mm-hmm. So we just got to make sure that we elevate whack shit, and people that are against it, you know, if you want to go to that school over there, great. But we can't support you on that whack shit. But if you go to Grambling State and y'all lose 0 to 80, we're going to support you because you went to the good shit. I don't care if you went to the other school and you went 85 to 0, boo you. but you went to Grambling and you put in the work. That's not whack shit. That's good shit. We're going to support this. So I think as we go forward, we have to maintain the status of elevating the good shit, don't support whack shit, and make sure we support all people who are motivated in the same movement as us. But I think, certain things, D-Nice has always been there. D-Nice just didn't pop up. He been there, but just some people wasn't checking for D-Nice. But D-Nice been doing what he got caught doing what he did best, and that's DJ, King of the 808.
He wasn't sexy enough. He wasn't an influence. He wasn't all this stuff. But this is what happened. So my point to your point, I don't think you did a dissent. I think you did a necessary check.
I was trying to be different. Damn.
To your point, I have to say, if we do not have a code of conduct or a measurement in which we understand what is whack and what is not, then this is what happens. But for the record, a whole bunch of people in Hollywood produce a whole bunch of garbage, but they have the resources to do it and bounce back from it, right?
Yep.
I mean, there's only a handful of Black people who've created whack stuff.
Get to bounce back,
or politically incorrect, and they had to do some either magic show stuff, some behind the closed doors bending in a way they may not have wanted to bend, and so on and so forth. But I also wanted to say this: when we create these spaces, also it's not just. And I like Peele's work, and I like what they're doing. Yeah. I like what I like. I like the Regina King, Ava DuVernay has been very intentional. And how she, pulls people. My point is that it can't be about 3, 4, and 5. And I like to your point is that it's not about going to Hollywood, but it is really about creating spaces. When I was an entertainment journalist, I saw what I would call a template of how they usually made a successful person. The first thing was to remove them from their family. This is like a template. Isolate them and you put them in this world called Hollywood, which is a lot of mind-altering things and a lot of behaviors that you're introduced to. A lot of feel-good stuff that when you wake up, you're like, oh, damn, what did I do? You know what I'm saying? And so you get so entrenched in this world that when you go out of that world and you're visiting your relatives, you're like, they don't understand me. And whatever. And all it is that you're just locked into this ecosystem that you're really the battery pack fueling. You have no say. Your contract is whack. Yep. You really don't have any money. And you're like, oh man, I've got to create this perception. I've got to keep working in it because, I need to eat or so on and so forth. We need to be, in terms of building our power, create these other spaces and hold on to these spaces.
Yep.
Right. And that's the good thing too, that they're seeing us in other aspects other than just housewives and thugs. Lovecraft County, it's the fantasy world. And so for me, somebody who grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons, I'm like, oh, this is dope. It's allowing you to, and even Jordan Peele with the sci-fi, it's allowing us to be seen in different spaces that we exist. It's revealing that, we're just not one monolithic type of people. We just don't do drama, but there's also some sci-fi, some fantasy, some role playing, some imagination. And so those are also the lanes and spaces that allow us to flourish and grow and say, okay, I can see myself in that person, even though we may be in different, platforms, but I see myself. I relate to that story. I relate to that concept.
All right. So let's move on. This was really good conversation. Another thing that we were talking about is how in COVID-19 kind of ushered in this new awareness of how to maintain your health. And part of that has been people really moving towards veganism, vegetarianism. The sexy word right now is plant-based, this plant-based movement. How do you see that? Or just the overall kind of, we were talking the pre-show, we were talking about the herbs we were taking and so on and so forth. But what did you see in terms of how it changed for the good?
For me, I saw, like you think about stuff that a lot of our family that's like a generation or two above us would call white shit, even though it's not. Right? You know what I mean? When they like, oh, you taking them herbs, you doing that white shit. Like now I think they're realizing that the effects of this, I think COVID has brought out a fear in some people where they're like, oh, I need to boost my immunity, but I don't want to use the pills they give you to boost immunity. What's the natural way to boost immunity?
Antioxidants.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So like, it's like that's one of the things another thing that COVID has brought about is people have been seeking out alternative ways to fix their health, be it either herbs, minerals, diet. Excuse me, like my mom was like, after all these years, my mom was like, I'm not eating meat no more. Like, I need to get myself together. I'm not eating meat. I'm gonna start taking sea moss. I'm looking at my mom like, who is this lady? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
He like, come over my house and I want you to make me fruit smoothies so I can drink 2 to 3 fruits. Yeah, like for real. So I have to go over to my mom's house and 3 times a week and make sure I go make her smoothies for a couple days. And it's like, yeah. And then she's like, can you give me something that I can't move around, something I can exercise with? So we had to go find something to, be able to help her. And it's like, I think COVID has, because of a lot of people, Black people in particular, have pre-existing conditions. It scared us, right? Like a lot of people have pre-existing, so it scares us. And it's like, well, I got pre-existing conditions. Let me try to get myself together and do whatever I got to do to battle and fight this thing. And I think that led into people wanting to eat better, people want to exercise, people want to take care of their health a little more and do a little seriously, because even though you would say diabetes is dire, people know they can live with diabetes. But if you say diabetes is dire and if you get COVID, you're going to die, it becomes more immediate, right? So because of that immediacy, I think you have people operating and shifted a lot of thinking. So that's, to me, what I saw.
Yeah. And then those hospital lines are too long now. You're not getting in for diabetes right now. Diabetes is secondary. It's COVID taking place. Those hospitals, COVID right now. But, for me, it really was just another day. I've kind of been mindful of my diet since like the 90s. And for me, it was just another day. And even the cycle, certain circles of my friendships. Now, I did have friends. Like, there was a period in time in the early 2000s, I was a vegan, right? But I stopped that. And during that time, my friends would laugh at me, a couple of them. Now, they're trying to be vegan. So I find it funny now that, after all this time, like, okay, all the stuff you laughed at me about and mocked and said, what you eat? Oh, you eating some wood, you eating some bark. Oh, you a rabbit. Let's go hang with with Bugs Bunny today. Now all of a sudden, y'all Bugs Bunny. So it's like, so for me, it's more of a balanced diet. Between the veganism, the plant-based, those are two different terms. For me, I just try to incorporate certain things. I've been off the chicken for a while. I like a good steak. But for me, I the processed meats, I'm not too fond of, like I will say this. I had tried the Impossible Burger and Beyond Burger. Okay. I've had made vegan chili, so there are things I do try because I try to make sure that, you incorporate the vegetables, but vegetables, you don't require pork. Anybody can be a vegan or plant-based with collard greens and some onions and peppers. So some things have automatically been our diet. You don't have to put a ham hock or a turkey neck in your greens. So that certain things go to choices. So I think, maybe this time frame will open up people's perspective to consider how they eat. But at the same time, you also got the, DoorDash. Those things made it easy for people to get food quicker. And for people who are living in the community who are in food deserts, plant-based diets may not be an option. Although they may be more economical, they don't taste good and people aren't used to it. So in different aspects, if you're used to maintaining your diet, COVID just made you stronger. If you have pre-existing conditions, what COVID did was say, hey, it opened you up to some opportunity. And if you're in a food desert, it just worsened the desert and made it what it was. So, now it becomes the task of how do you address those issues?
Yeah, I want to say that, I would say this, there are people who have really great diets who are straight up assholes. So the diet, in my opinion, doesn't define the whole person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So even people who like had good diets would like suffering from like depression and isolation and loneliness during the time. But I have to big up the Black baby boomers. I mean, the circuit, the chirping circuit for the Black baby boomers was a lot different prior to COVID-19, I would say in terms of in my surroundings, a lot of Black baby boomers were more invested in believing and listening to their doctors. But what we saw in COVID were a lot of doctors, I just interviewed this nurse, clinics were closed down, doctors were not coming, even hospitals were laying off nurses. So there was a complete collapse of the healthcare system. So them baby boomers started reaching back to what they learned when they were in Arkansas and Texas.
Grandmama.
And,
Grandmama talk.
All those remedies. I mean, they were passing vitamin C, zinc. I just saw just a heightened use of like herbs, things that, were when you moved to the city or you became fancified, you just went to the doctor and the doctor took care of it. But like you said, because diabetes and the things that in the Black community that we have overwhelmingly became, third or fourth or fifth or not even an issue. Another thing that was cycling around is that a lot of people were not getting, when you went to the hospital, the understanding as a Black person was you went there to die. Like it wasn't really necessarily. So, I mean, our people were very conscientious in terms of maintaining, their health. And I really like that. I really like the plant-based movement. I think it also was out of necessity because remember, there was a shortage on meat, right? Like you go to a store, you can only buy 2 pieces of meat. These are things, this is something that's happened in the United States. And you also saw, in terms about the plant-based, this emergence of Black farmers like, hey, we're over here, we've been here, support us. So these are the things I think are very, I like what I see. It's about how do we sustain it now? Like we can't just do this in crisis mode.
Right.
This really has got to be a part of our lifestyle.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I just want to say, ending in terms of like in the Black farming community, which Ark Republic now talks to a lot because of COVID and seeing them as a great source. What they're saying is that we've got the food. We just need a distribution system. So exactly. Black people with trucks and, or refrigerated trucks, people who know maps, we just need people to drop the food off because they're getting orders all over the country. They just got to get the food to them. So that's what the talks are now.
So this also goes back, I think, to your what you just said goes back to what we were talking about earlier with HBCUs. What COVID should have done is allow certain HBCUs to go back to the essence of why a lot of us were created, agricultural and mechanical schools, correct? So why are we not looking at certain institutions as more of a food source institution? That way, we're looking at channeling in and networking with different farmers. You create an institution, a program which addresses those needs.
Right.
And that solves a problem. So for the next pandemic, we don't have these issues. There are such things as warehouse and store. Not every institution has to be a quote unquote higher, academic institution. It can be a place where entrepreneurs and businesses are run. And people can come out. It can be a resource. It can be a storehouse. There's a lot of things, different ways a school can be reimagined. But I think that will be one viable way that can assist the farmers. Right.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I know Sharice told me, and I knew it, but she reminded me that Southern University has, it's the first school to have, HBCU to have a marijuana, growing, a component of their agricultural department.
Right.
Marijuana.
Southern.
They grow it and they sell it. Yeah.
Southern,
it's a revenue source. They grow it and they sell it, and they have relationships with nearby farmers around Baton Rouge because it's a lot of farmland.
Yeah. Well, Mississippi just passed recreational.
Okay,
medicinal. Mississippi passed medicinal. This
is going to be really.
Now listen, Mississippi. They'll pass weed. They'll pass weed, but they ain't gonna guarantee you the right to vote. You can smoke before you can vote.
People been doing that. So
Man.
this is I like this. So part of this is back to the land. I have seen such an increase of people like, look, I know I can't grow. I live in an apartment. I know I can't grow a whole farm, but let me just at least grow my basil. Let me grow just something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we're getting back to that. And it is predicted that we're going to have to, because the food system is about to plummet, because what was discovered is that in all these trade wars between China, that the Trump administration just wrote these checks in the name of agriculture, but not to farmers, right? So, you have a lot of farms that are closing down.
Right.
So people are becoming aware, and when you begin to grow your own food, it tastes so differently.
Right.
Yeah. So let's go to, we talked about plant-based. Let's go to mental and spiritual health. We talked a lot about that, but I really want to be very specific. I want to put the light on Black men, since, I'm talking to you all. What has been the conversations amongst Black men about mental health, spiritual health, and even relationships? There was I mentioned this, there was an article that talked about, it was a Black guy, and he said what COVID-19 made him realize is that Black men in general need to develop deeper relationships with other Black men. So what are your thoughts about all of that?
Well, for me, being isolated, I think some of my relationships have been with my brothers, and my father. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing for me, is learning how to be a man in these times. Because as a millennial, as we all are in these millennial times, modernity, you get to go to college, and we have, I have things my dad didn't have, but also my dad has a whole lot of things I don't have. And just being able to understand from a different perspective how to deal with things, how to maintain your identity, how not to compromise, teaching you how to be mentally strong. And there's something about, hearing your dad talk to you that, fathers don't necessarily have to have college degrees, but fathers have life degrees. They have man degrees. Especially in this time where, a lot of concepts or perceptions, other people's perceptions of manhood, or what Black manhood should look like, and what a man is, what I identify as the solid ship I stood on with my dad. He got us through South Central LA in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? He's born in Mississippi. It's hearing his stories of how he dealt with adversity during those times, and how a lot of those things that he dealt with are manifesting themselves now. A lot of things that he went through during his time, I may have gone through, even though I went to college, I lived different places, but it's still the journey. It's still the experience. No matter what era you live in, you're still a Black man. And there's certain things that can't be compromised. There's certain things you have to be accountable for. There's certain things you have to be responsible for. And I think if you're able to do that, that's your pillar. You build off of that. And then everything else, you could be accountable and responsible to reaching out to your brothers, checking up on somebody, and following through, because those are your words. But it's understanding, what are your pillars? What are they based off of? What are you built off of? And that's, for me, has been, other than my father, my brothers, and my I don't have homies. I got brothers I went to college with. Most of my relationships are like 30 to 40 years old. I don't have new quote unquote friends. I got people I grew up with from 10 years old, and then people I went through college with. So it's a brotherhood, seeing how they grow up with their families and how they maintain their families, and, still stay married, still have a healthy family, and raise their kids at this time. Getting advice where I'm weak, admitting I'm weak. I think that's the big thing. Admit when you're weak. It's the Tyson thing. What about me? Admit, I don't know, bro. This is hard. This is rough. And being able to say that and know that, okay, next play.
Jane?
Yeah, for me, I think it's a lot of, same. It's a lot of the same for me. Was me and my brothers are tight, and a lot of time has been spent either talking to them on Zoom and phone calls or via just text every day, and chilling with my dad when I go over there to help them out throughout the week, and then checking in with my friends and like literally telling my friends, my boys, my brothers, like, yo, I love you, bro. I hope everything is okay. Extending things and trying to have more mature conversations about our emotions as adult men, as adult Black men, because I know there's very particular things that we go through that we often didn't talk about, that I think we are learning to talk about more without fear of being called soft, or, fear of, being made fun of even for talking about these feelings. I think that thing is kind of changing. And I would like to say, because I know we talk a lot of stuff about the younger generation, I think the younger generation has shown me a lot in regards to that, in regards to how they talk to their friends and want to make sure their friends are good and good mental health. Like I've had conversations with cats much younger than me that made me open my eyes to some things that, me as a 40 and up cats, that we probably wouldn't talk about in a barbershop, that we probably wouldn't, certain conversations, discussions we wouldn't have, they have on the regular. And I looked at them, I'm like, yo, I got to commend y'all for that, for y'all to be able to have these, very substantial conversations about emotions and about feelings, and with your gay homeboys, and you know what I mean? And your trans homies. Like, these are conversations that we probably wouldn't have had the capacity to have, because nobody gave us that capacity, to have those conversations. And it taught me a lot. And so it actually helped with some of my other relationships. You know what I mean? Some other relationships that I didn't nurture probably the way I should. Like one of my gay homeboys, I hadn't nurtured that relationship the way I should have. And I hadn't heard him out and hadn't listened to him the way I should have. And, things like that. So I think this time has helped a lot of us really mature as men. And I like what you said about, a degree for men, right? Like, because so many people are trying to tell us what manhood and masculinity should look like. So many people are trying to tell us how we should operate in our manhood and masculinity. And sometimes I push back on that, you know what I mean? Because nobody knows what it's like to be a Black man, but a Black man.
Right.
And,
and everybody's walk is different.
Everybody's walk is different. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
So one thing I am is, I feel like a lot of us are getting a lot more spiritually connected, not just to a higher being, but getting spiritually connected to each other. Right. You know what I'm saying? Getting spiritually connected to each other in a way that we haven't, because so much was so surface. You see the game last night. You went to the club, you see some chicks, like it was so surface. And now we get into the conversation like, yo, how are you and the family? Y'all good? Like,
so it's the V word, vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be able to submit to that place and not look at it as a victim, but you can control that. You own what you feel, and being able to be empowered by, with being able to let that feeling go so that you can move forward. Because certain things can hold you back. And, I think there's a lot of introspection that happens at this time. I mean, there's a period of time, I think, in its early stages, it's just really you and four walls. And if you're single, it's one thing to be, I guess, a Black male in a relationship where you have somebody you can bounce stuff off of, but being quarantined single, it's just you and the four walls.
Yeah.
And so it's finding different ways that how do you keep that mind strong? And it goes back to conversations with Pops. It's having vision. It's being vulnerable to say, you know what, I'm not tougher than this moment, but you know what, I'm stronger than the moment, and those are two different emotions, two different sentiments, but being able to understand what the difference between the two is. And if you understand how strong you are, you can push through where you are right now and move to another place. And being able to articulate that and share that with somebody else and say, yo, that's how I felt. And being say, yo, I felt this way the other night. And hearing your homie say that too, and it's those things. It's even being able to cry, be like, yo, I felt this way. I saw this movie. I read this word, it's being, one of the most powerful things I think I value about life right now is I got a homie I went to college with. He's a preacher. And, I've been able to tap in and, I'm not a Christian per se. Let me take the per se out. I'm not, but I value his word. I value my homie being able to pray for me. And if I can drink a beer with you, then you should be able to pray for me. And I think those are different aspects that we have to be able to celebrate each other. If we could pull each other to we could push each other to ratchetness we definitely can pull each other to righteousness. So it's being able to have all of those things on the same continuum as we continue to grow, because they help. Our mental health is only as strong as our spiritual health. And if they are disconnected, then blown fuse.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can see how certain NBA players, that's one of the things that a lot of NBA players said, being in a bubble was hard. So it don't matter if you're a millionaire, you can bounce a ball and dunk. It's hard to be in touch with yourself and realize you got to look at yourself and think about, this is where I've been. This is where I am, why I'm here, how I get here. That's some real shit. And you got to hold that.
Right. I mean, and that's what COVID-19 did. It just totally stripped everybody of all of the buffers that they had been using in order to not really deal or not really. Or I'll get back to that later. I mean, everybody got stripped down.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. It's really, this is what I hear is that, where you are you're comfortable because you are allowing yourself to be multidimensional emotionally and spiritually. And that is something that a lot of men in general don't have in this American pop culture, but Black men specifically. So I think that's really dope. I want to know, and you hinted on this, in what ways has your understanding of intimacy grew?
Mm.
I'm saying this for the ladies. Hey,
I think for me, being stuck in the house with my wife for that long.
Beat your ass.
No, I say that to say we either was gonna get tighter and get stronger, or it was gonna get crazy and implode and turn to something else. We're gonna realize we just don't like each other. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to report that we actually like each other.
Okay, that's good to know.
You know what I'm saying? Like I'm happy to report, like we actually really, really like each other. And because I know some people who don't.
Right.
I know some people who don't.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So we really enjoy each other. Like I know people like, oh, when this is over, I'm getting divorced and like you're getting on my last nerve. But like, no, we really, really enjoy each other. And we've been able to, it's crazy. It almost forced us to like find this deeper connection, because trying to survive through this together with 2 kids and being stuck in a house for all that time and trying to be creative and making sure life just don't get stale and bland for us. I think I have a better appreciation for how much communication plays a part in intimacy.
Good point, brother.
Checkmate, bro.
You know what I'm saying?
Checkmate. I mean, okay, so I'm not, I think, that's kind of, once again, single life, okay? And I think, to your point, it's the conversation at certain points. And it's being able to find somebody. Well, let me even throw that back. Let me start with myself. I think for me, it's more along the lines of who I am and what I want. And not being able to, and not just settling for something because it feels good to the flesh. Mm-hmm. You've done that before, and I think intimacy isn't just a physical thing, but I think intimacy is the oneness of self, and being one. And I don't mean necessarily in self gratification, but intimacy and saying that who are you? What do you want? And how can you be that? So that you can attract that. And whether that's working toward, higher spiritual manifestation, physical, economic, whatever, it's being able to manifest that and being able to say, once again, strip yourself down and say, this is who I am. This is what I want. How can I be this? And being able to walk in that person. And this is who I am. And being able to say, if you don't rock with it, then cool, kick rocks. I'm cool. And so I think intimacy has grown for me in terms of, this is who I am. And if you can get with it, great. If you don't, cool. It ain't meant to be. And being comfortable in a space of, of what quarantine has taught a lot of us is you got to be solo sometimes. You got to be that oneness. But in those moments when you do interact, it is building on something greater than just the physical sometimes. It's, you know, having those spiritual conversations, just a casual conversation, that being able to feel like a boy again, or having, you know, talking to somebody and I feel like a little girl again. And I think those are the phases of life. You know, we got to be able to feel that. You don't have to act like one, but it does allow you to feel and get in touch with certain aspects of your being and your essence so that you can continue to grow and give some energy to where you are.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and I also would say, like, this time period, I would say it was the first time, starting with Kobe Bryant's death, was like the first kind of time that I saw Black men grieving, crying in public. Right?
Yeah.
Len Bias for me. Len Bias was the first time.
Len Bias was the first for you. Yeah, I mean,
and Pac, but Kobe, Kobe was
right. I mean, actually, you know, everybody, you know, saying, seeing it, you know, and it being in the media. So started with Kobe, and now, and when the whole George Floyd killing happened, there were several, you know, Black men in mid-sentence just could not hold it anymore, right? Yeah. And it was just like a collective crack in the ether, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And Jacob Blake.
Oh, he cried. Who's that?
The brother that was shot in front of his kids.
Oh, yeah. Okay. There's been and then in not Waukesha, but Kenosha.
Yeah. So it's at some point you get weary. At some point, I think by July, I was numb, and that's a sad space too, to be numb to it. Mm-hmm. You know, because at some point that numbness breeds other energies. That, okay, you know what? I don't feel this, so I probably won't feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk a lot about that. We in the Remedy podcast, in terms of you know, this whole year has been a lot of negotiation with our emotions. You know, like, you know, for me, we have all of this, you know, these killings just rotating. I apologize. I did not mean to disrespect the brother who passed, but there were so many killings that had been basically media's main meat of distribution that I lost track because I had to negotiate not going crazy at the 11,000 meetings that I had to in the name of diversity and equity. You know what I'm saying? When I hear those terms, I'll be like, ugh! You know what I mean?
Right.
But I also, you know, to end this, I want to talk about, you know, for the next 5 minutes is how did the political sphere change?
Civil War.
The
Republicans are having a civil war. They can't trust each other anymore. So I don't think, you know, for me, it's the ancillary approach to politics. I'm on tangent. This is y'all issue. I stick my toe in, my 2 cents in when it's required, but 98 cents in this is y'all, and I'm gonna watch, because a lot of what has happened, this has changed the landscape of how even Republicans are going to view each other. You got guys who, you know, Raffensperger, lifelong Republican, Chris Krebs, lifelong Republicans are feeling marginalized and are saying, why is my life being threatened? Because I did the right thing. And even when you look at, you know, the political appointees that he alleged that if I pack this court, they'll help me out. No dice, homie. Mm-hmm. So what people who were the Trumpists, who probably are not Republican, and now the people who are traditional Republicans, this is going to change how they move and what's going to happen going forward. That's my view on the Republican side. But it's you know, and then what's going to happen? So now we have the runoff coming up, and now there are people. Lynn Wood, the attorney, telling people why vote? It's rigged. So now you got people that don't want to vote.
Welcome to Black life.
Hey, I'm happy. I mean, I'm not. I don't have. This is my observation. I'm not crying. My shoulder's dislocated, so you can't lean on it. All I'm saying is this is what I observed from the Republican Party.
Interesting. Dang.
Yes.
What are some takeaways with the politics?
Real quick, takeaways with the politics is I see some of the people in the Democratic Party actually gaining some balls, which is all I've been asking for a long time. They are pushing that line on Joe Biden in regards to his cabinet picks, in regards to, I don't know if y'all saw, he released his economics team, and it was a lot of black people who their economic base is based in racial economic equality. So I thought that was, a big deal. We know he's moderate, so we know we're going to have to continue to make sure we push more progressive things on him. But like I said, I've noticed and I've seen Claiborne, what's his name? Richmond. I seen those guys like, look, these are the things we have to do. These are the things we have to push. And it's up to us to continue to push that line and say, yo, if y'all go too moderate, y'all going to lose us at the state level. Y'all going to lose a lot. Y'all going to lose a lot of these races at the state level in 2 years. So we need y'all to stay progressive.
But what about this Pelosi thing? I mean, come on now. I mean, once again, under status quo. I mean, with
putting her back as the
the bill that was passed, and the bill that was passed without a stimulus for the citizens. So it's like you passed something that didn't benefit people, and it's an alligator with no teeth.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the use? It's the same. And so even if I was a Democrat, that would still be less appealing to me. That Absolutely. It's still the same costume. Until you replace certain people with certain energies that can actually get something done and maybe be a little bit more, determined.
Yep.
And not so willing to appeal and accommodate and toe the line. When in a fight, do what the fighters do.
Yeah, I would like to see, a presidency, they always judge the first 100 days. I would like to see those who know that you really have to actively push out, put a 2-year agenda, like a 2-year, like in 2 years, this is what we want, or we're going to vote your ass out.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like for real, and be like, day one, this is what we want. That will totally, in my opinion, shift the internal dynamics for the Congress who are Democrats, because part of their rationale in terms of having this moderate leadership is, we lose in some of our, constituencies, but what a lot of people are not saying is a lot of Republican women took seats in this election, and Democrats lost seats that they were not going to lose.
Right.
You cannot tell me it was this, and see, this is what this whole Obama, what he just said in terms of, defund the police was a slogan. Y'all need to stop saying that, right? So he's leading toward this respectability, black politics of, you can't be so to the left, or that you actually mess it up. But
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. Because we know that, Obama do be on his respectability shit. But I've watched how defund the police has confused and been confused, not by the right, by the left themselves, and been defined differently by the left themselves.
Right. And I think to Dane's point, if you're going to be Democrat, you got to play the Democrat game. I understand it's a stratified party. Now, if you're going to be left, you can't be Democrat. And so those become the issue. If you cannot be a part of a party that at its root was against your self-determination. I don't care what kind of makeup you put on that pig. It's still a pig. And so if you want leftist issues, you have to separate and do something different. And if you choose to work with this party because it's moderate on certain issues, then so be it. But you're not going to change the Democrat Party who it is at its core. And so I think for him to play devil's advocate, for him, if you're playing the Democrat game, you can't say defund the police. But you can say, hey, maybe we should reorganize some of this funding that you use for the police department. It's how you word it. Now, if we just
but that's what defund the police essentially was about. Move monies out in order to put them in other things. Right?
So pick another word, like he said.
For the record, right? The whole defund the police became this talk out of nowhere. People were just protesting, and then you heard defund the police. People were like, well, where the fuck did that come from?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And like,
it was just somebody yelling in the background.
Exactly.
Somebody yelling in the background.
Right, exactly. It was like, whose agenda is this, right?
That's a good idea.
Right. So, let's be clear. However, though, what Obama does very well is, well, one, he does very well with being the figurehead of having these tough conversations with the Negroes in order to keep them in check. Hush, hush, hush. Obama speaking. We've got to listen to them. But even though I may not fundamentally agree with Obama, you will not tell me not to take that out of part of the conversation, right? That should be part of the political discourse, period. You can't tell me because it makes bad politics, I can't talk about it. Like, F you, dog. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the part that irks me.
Well, I get that, but I don't think he was saying don't talk about it. Like, that's the thing. Like, I watched that whole interview, and he was not saying don't talk about it. He said he's actually for what defunding the police means. Okay. The issue is and has been what the slogan has been bastardized, because in Minnesota, defund the police means abolish the police. And in South Carolina, where Jamie Harrison lost, they used Minnesota's version of defund the police to help him lose that Senate race against Lindsey Graham, because they scared everybody saying he wants to defund the police and take police out of your neighborhoods. And if you poll black people, even black people don't want no police, right? Like even the most they don't want no police. Right. So that language is hurtful to, like you said, an activist can say defund the police. A politician in certain places cannot. A politician in California can run on defund the police. A politician in South Carolina cannot. Right. And, and I think that's what has to be made clear, because my thing is, it took me a while to understand what defund the police is myself, because there were so many different, like you said, it came out of nowhere. It was floating around in the ether, and people was just like using it to go at the mayors and you going to defund the police or not? You going to defund the police or not? So it was it was trying to put you on this either or side of if you say you don't want to defund the police, then that means you are for police brutality, when one kind of really didn't have anything to do with the other. And then everybody says, and this is the crazy thing, and this is why I feel like Obama's right. Sonny Houston on The View, Roland Martin, like almost everybody I watch who say they support defund the police, they say, well, all defund the police mean is reallocate, and they all have to go into the same explanation. That shows you the slogan is not good. If every time you say it, you have to go into all of these explanations.
And I agree with it's the packaging. The packaging is all wrong. Okay. If you're going to be a Democrat and you want to account, because that's the sad thing. The thing about when you say defund the police, to Dane's point, your 75-year-old grandmama ain't going to vote for that person. Because she needs police in the neighborhood. She want to feel safe. And a lot more blacks are more conservative in their views than they are liberal, especially the older ones.
Especially down south.
Especially down south. So we need to look at, like I said, not we, but if you're going to play the Democrat game, you have to understand how this doublespeak works. And that you have to get control of the narrative, because the narrative of defund the police and the narrative of socialism are anathema to a voting constituency. Even though we're okay with socialism when it's a COVID stimulus check. Nobody cared about socialism in that aspect. Nobody cared about socialism when the banks got bailed out in some aspects, or the car industry money or public schools. We don't care about it. But as soon as someone says socialism, it's this umbrella of just grand evilness and just despotic behavior that's going to come up, and it's nowhere near the case. And so it's people being more politically savvy and astute in terms of what they read and what they hear, and actually doing some research to say, okay, this is what this means, and this is how this applies here. It's also having people that come here, we engage in people and make them understand our history. Because I think people look at American history through the lens of white history and not understand how these policies, they come here and say as Republicans and Democrats have impacted us.
I want to just quickly respond to that. But my critique, in my opinion, is the issue with the Democratic Party. They are not flexible enough. They are not, they're not flexible enough in order to gauge and begin to rethink what the Democratic Party is going to look like. It is changing from the inside. And so if defund the police looks different in different places and the conversation is different, then the Democratic Party has got to do the work on how do you become an entity that is heterogeneous and acknowledges it, but how do we move instead of muscling people out of their position? You got to be moderate. You can't say this progressive stuff, right? Yeah. So that's some of the work that needs to be done in the political space, which I think is being done, but I think it really needs to be to the fore, or the Nancy Pelosi's of the world will keep being elected, or at least play these leadership roles. Mm-hmm. So final thoughts, brothers. This was a great talk. It feels good to talk about good stuff all the time. It feels good. Okay, yes. Mm-hmm. Final thoughts on this really great. Oh, can I ask you a question? Could I ask you, it's two very quick questions. We are implementing this in every weekly check-in. First question is, what is on your bookshelf? What are you reading right now? Because I get a lot of questions from my students because they're Instagram scholars. Like, what are you reading, Professor Shivers? What's that book? Give us a book. What is something that you're reading?
Well, currently I'm reading NWA book, Not Without Alonzo, because I'm doing the research for this documentary. So I'm reading through his book about the history of him, World Class Wrecking Crew, NWA, and West Coast hip hop. So that's currently what I'm on. It's super interesting too.
Yeah. Okay. What about you?
So, so I'm getting back in my role-playing stuff. So I just bought Tasha's Cauldrons from Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm kind of looking at Dungeons and Dragons stuff and also reading The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. So that's kind of where I am. But right now I've been looking at my role-playing stuff. I'm geeking out right now.
Okay, that's pretty dope. Dope. I'm reading The Destruction of the Black Civilization because I'm teaching Chinese students. Yeah. And so I got into this really interesting conversation about who's African and who's not. So I had to bust out some some Destruction of Black Civilization.
Big Daddy Kane with the Afro-Asiatic.
That's what we were talking about. He was trying to, well, Phoenicia, I was like, that's a white man speak. Let's to net her. But anyway, so the second question is, what are you listening to? What is in your rotation?
Oh, Busta Rhymes' new album for me.
Busta Rhymes.
Busta Rhymes' new album has been in my rotation heavy. And randomly, a bunch of, I know this is going to sound random as hell, but just bear with me. I've been listening to like the soundtrack from Cabaret and Sweet Charity, because I recently watched the Fosse Verdine show on FX, and it got me to watching clips on YouTube. And listen, the way they were shooting and the way they were using the shots to complement the songs was kind of incredible. And I'm mad that I'm just now discovering it. So I'm like now in this deep wormhole on the compositions that they use and how they shot these compositions and how he was meticulous in shooting certain joints and all that. So anyway, that's what I'm listening to. That's what I'm on right now. Busta Rhymes and a bunch of show tunes from Bob Fosse musicals.
So for me, it's Busta Rhymes. It's Benny the Butcher, Conway the Machine, West Side Gun, and William Grant Still.
Interesting.
And William Grant Still, I was amazed. Like in just doing some research for a project I'm working on, some work I'm doing. I was like, okay, let me check out some of this stuff. And I think another brother, he went to Morehouse to Edmund Jenkins. They're classical artists. And what I found about Edmund Jenkins is like, even then in the 1800s, we still had this thirst for identity. We like gold. Like he went to Europe and he had a diamond and he had this fat kind of Corvette, and it was like really fascinating. And his whole mission was to show Black life in Europe, Black life through classical music, Black life and how we manifest this, and it was dope. So between Edmund Jenkins and then you had William Grant Still, if you listen to it now, it's like, wow, this can probably be something that can go in the backdrop or be sampled now, but it's phenomenal. But then I got to go back when I'm feeling thuggish and listen to Benny the Butcher. Gotta have Benny the Butcher. You know what
Yes,
I'm saying?
my thug was out last week. Right now, I am just listening to a lot of a cappella versions of things that I like. I've been listening to a lot of Hamiltons, we call them tones now. Just a lot of like acoustic Jasmine Sullivan's new stuff I really love. And also Christmas music. PJ Morton's album is pretty dope to me. And
Time for the Temptations, huh?
Yeah, well, I'll wait for the Temptations. I want to hear like new spins, new spins on it. So yeah, and I always have my daily dose of jazz. Yeah, I gotta have jazz every day. It puts me that, and actually, I listen to in the morning. The first thing I do is I put on Tibetan chanting in the bowl. It like puts me because a lot of stuff runs through my mind, so it helps me. That jazz and classical.
Yeah.
Centers me. So with that being said, now final thoughts are to you guys.
Final thoughts. I got to run out of here, but I just want to say thank you all. I had a great time today. It was a great talk. Always love getting on with y'all. I learned a lot. I love when we engage in these conversations, and let's continue and get Art Republic cracking the way it's supposed to be, so people won't be trying to steal our contributors.
Shade.
Thanks again. I enjoyed the mental sparring. It's always good in having your mind massaged. Always enjoy the day. Be peaceful with yourself. Be peaceful with somebody else.
Thank you. And I love my mama, but I'm a daddy's girl, so it's always good to be around smart Black male energy. We are out this bitch. Peace.
All right, y'all.
Okay.